Hello everyone and welcome to another video on my channel. In this one I'm going to go through the round 4 of the manufacturer series, and we are at the Nurburgring 24-hour track in these Gr3 cars. Now what I'm going to be showing you in this video is I'm going to first very briefly talk about the race settings or the race information, etc. And then I'm going to be doing I'm going to show my fastest lap, and then I'm going to show you the detailed lap afterwards. I will very quickly talk about the race strat as well. While I'm in here, I'm not going to show any race stints or anything, because I don't want to make the video too long. And I think for this, the best thing to learn is just how to do this track well with the braking references and that. I think it overload people if you describe about the rough braking references, and then on top of that, trying to describe to you when tyre saving, etc. I might point out a little bit during the detailed lap, but anyway, let's go through these race settings. So as you can see here, we've got 5 laps, 16 cars as always, rolling start. The qualifying time is 15 minutes. So basically, what that means is you've only got time for one flying lap. However, you can take as long as you would like on the outlap, and I'll talk about that in a second. Fuel consumption rate is on ×2 in the race. Of course, it's off during qualifying, and the tyre wear is also on ×2. Usable tyres is both race mediums and softs. Also into some wets, but there's no weather in this race, so we don't need to worry about those two tyres. Required tyre type, race mediums and softs, so you have to use both the dry tyres in this race. Like I said, we're in Gr3 cars, and we are in a high-speed BOP, because Nordschleife/Nurburgring 24-hour is quite a fast track, so of course it's high-speed BOP. You are allowed to change the brake balance as usual. Of course, DR and SR's affected, and there's like mechanical damage. It says minimum number of pit stops, none. However, you have to use both mediums and softs, so you do have to pit. Track limits is on normal, shortcut penalties on weak, no wall collision penalties, and of course there's penalty for contact, and there's of course pit lane line cutting penalty, which is on. Although that is very hard, it's very hard to go over the white line on this track, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm going to very quickly talk about the race itself. So as you can see, ×2 fuel. In a few cars, you're going to have to fuel save quite a bit if you're thinking about putting no fuel in the pits, because you've got to remember, even if you put 1% of fuel in, the animation itself takes 2 seconds. So for some cars that are thirsty on fuel, that can't really fuel save, you're probably just going to have to burn the fuel and refuel during the pits. And for cars that aren't thirsty but can't really fuel save well, maybe use fuel mixtures on the end of straights, and maybe do a little bit of short shifting to make sure you don't have to refuel in the pits. For cars like the Gr3, so for cars that are really bad on fuel consumption but can short shift, so Gr3, the Citroen, etc., we have to fuel save a lot. However, because we don't lose much time short shifting, in my opinion, it's still worth short shifting to not refuel in the pits, because if you were to rev out those cars as usual, you'd probably be using about at least 25% a lap of fuel. Since it's 5 laps, you want to be using 20% of fuel a lap to make a fuel tank a full fuel tank last without having to refill in the pits. And of course, if you're using 25% a lap, let's say you come in on lap 3 and you've used 25% of fuel, you're going to have to refuel. So you've got 25% of fuel left. You're going to have to refuel to 50%. So you're going to have to put in 25% of fuel. So not only are you going to have to wait the first 2 seconds of a fuel animation, I believe it's 7 litres per second. So you're going to have to wait an additional 4 seconds in the pits to get the 25% of fuel in. Well, a bit less than 4 seconds. It's like 3.5 seconds. Either way, you're in the pits for 5.5 seconds longer than people that aren't putting fuel in. So in my opinion, especially if you're in slipstream, it's worth fuel saving to not refuel in the pits, in my opinion. But without further ado, now I'm going to show you my fastest lap, followed by a detailed lap afterwards. I would also appreciate if you could like and sub as well, for more of these guides and for more lap time challenges, etc. I enjoy doing them, so I'll carry on providing the content for you guys if you may so wish. But now, let's go on to the fastest time trial lap I've did. Cheers, guys. Hello again, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that long lap. I think it's a decent lap. There's probably a couple seconds in it, to be honest. I didn't do too much of it because I wanted to make sure I get up the guide out with enough time for you guys to watch it and learn from it. Because I could spend hours on it and try to get a very good lap time, but I'd rather it comes out early enough that you guys can learn from it. I'll point out where I think there's mistakes in that anyway. Since this stuff is super long and I don't want to make the video as long as possible, I'm going to try my best to describe what sort of apex speed I'm carrying, but obviously because it's such a long track, it's going to be hard for me to remember what mile an hour I was taking each corner, but I'll try my very best. But I'd say the main thing you want to do here is just keep it consistent. The ultimate pace obviously does matter a bit, but honestly, it's much better to be consistent here than be fast and make mistakes, especially in a race, because if you're in mid-pack and that, it's super difficult to overtake. You need to qualify out the front if you want any chance of a good result here, in my opinion. Anyway, let's get into the lap. First corner. Oh, one more thing. I'm in the BR set, of course, so if you're under a different car, you're probably going to have to use slightly different braking references, just because my car has a ton of downforce, but it's also so on straight and doesn't have great brakes, so just keep that in mind. And of course, on medium tyres, you probably have to brake a bit earlier in the race as well. Let's go. First corner. So there's this grass here that starts, and then there's this 100 marker. I'm braking, I'd say half a car length after the grass. Yeah, here. Yeah, I'd say in the BL said it's possible to brake half a car length after the start of this grass here. I'm going to be braking a straight line. As soon as I go down to second, I'm going to be turning to the right. You want your right tire to clip the inside curb, and then you want to carry on turning to the right, just to open up the angle for the second part of the chicane here. I will pause it halfway between the two. This corner, I was taking about 45 miles per hour from memory. Keep turning right. And then as soon as you're halfway between left and right, and as soon as you're like halfway on this still straight, I brake to about 4 and slow it down to about 42 miles an hour. Get as close to this inside barrier as possible, especially in an MR, because there is a bump in the middle of a track that can kind of push your ride. So you need to be as close to the inside barrier as possible. I do mess it up here. I was a bit too wide, so I definitely lost a tenth here. Anyway. Yeah, I lost probably 2 tenths in this first sector. But anyway, here, obviously, in TT conditions at least, you can use this as a braking reference. So there's this when this track configuration ends. So here, I'm braking probably 2 car lengths after that. But in TT conditions at least, there is this little line shadow here. That is the perfect braking reference for this BR set. So I'm braking right on the end of it. And for this corner, I'm aiming to be about 92 miles an hour, and on the exit you want to be halfway between the left and right hand side, just so that you've still got enough of an angle to attack the right hander coming up. Here, I'm braking basically in the BR side anyway. I'm braking at the beginning of this curve, just because the BR side has really good downforce. I'll probably have to brake a bit earlier than every other car here, just because my car has the best downforce, but it has quite bad brakes. So because I'm carrying a lot of speed from the previous corner, I'm going to have to brake quite early here compared to, I think, every other car. But for this corner, I'm not sure if third or fourth is better yet. I do need to experiment it more. I think third is slightly better, to be honest, at least in TT. But in this corner, I was aiming to be about 64 miles an hour. Try to get your right wheels at least as close to the inside curve as possible. Ideally, you want to touch it. Use all the outside curve to carry as much momentum up the corner as possible. Without fourth in the BR set, go a bit to the left to open up this corner. And my next braking reference, I use this Dunlop timing board thing here. That is pretty much perfect for me in the bumper cam. As soon as I start to go past it, so any second now, I'm going to be braking, literally any second. There you go. So as soon as that what's it called? The Dunlop timing things leaves my screen in bumper cam, that's when I'm braking. I'm going to do it in like a V shape, so I want to try get close to the first apex without touching it, go a little bit deep in, and then pick up the throttle early and go out the corner with good momentum out the corner, while not going too deep and losing a lot of time mid-corner. For this corner, I believe I was taking it about 57 mile an hour minimum apex speed. 56, 57, somewhere around there. Of course, I had a bit of oversteer, so careful. This corner, just follow that. As soon as you see the darker line here, turn to the left. Be said, easy flat. For a lot of cars, I think this will be quite difficult to go flat, especially with this wind. So you may have to do a safety lift. When BR said, on both mediums and softs, it's easy flat. I actually upshift here usually. I tested to say name for, but it's better to upshift to fifth early there. Here you can either extend or keep your keep all your tyres inside this right line. I'm not sure what's better, but I prefer to use the wide line here just to open up the corner. I'm braking halfway between the end of this little grey part of this track here and this 100 marker here. I'm braking pretty much halfway between the two. This corner I'm going to be exiting in fourth just to keep the car stabilised, and I'm aiming to be about 80 mile an hour on this first apex here. Try get your right tyres to be as close to this inside curve as possible to help drag your car around. You saw the exit, carry on turning to the left. As soon as you get towards the outside, so I'd say about 2 car lengths before the end of this barrier that lips out, I'm going to be braking it. I'm going to trail brake a bit, and I'm going to slow it down to about 84 mile an hour for this next corner. Take a wide line so that you've got a good angle out of the corner. I was a bit too wide on the exit, but I carried good momentum, but I didn't really lose time here. In fact, I did a good S3 on this lap. This corner, I like to use this little outside curbing here just to open up this angle, and I'm braking literally just before the 50. In the past, you could probably brake at 50 if you were to push it, but I felt very consistent braking about 55 meters here. As you can see, I've just started tapping the brakes. And I'm aiming to be on the first apex around 105 miles per hour from memory, and the second around 109 miles per hour from memory. But you want your right tyres to be between this curb and this right line, I'd say. Maybe just touching this red and right curb. I believe if your right tyres goes over this green part, that's when you get a track limit. And as soon as your left tyres goes over this green part, that's also a penalty. So just keep that in mind. It's a second penalty as well, so it's brutal. Here, I used these outside curbings as my braking reference. I use the end of this second red part of this curb as my braking reference. So any second now, there you go. I brake just before this end of the second red curb here on this particular lap. It's not the best reference to be honest, but it's the only one I could really use consistently, so that's the one I used. For this corner, you want to turn it early because it's a bit cambered and it's a bit bumpy in the middle of a track, so you need to be close to the inside here. Apex speed, you want to take it about 66 miles per hour from memory. Oh, no, it was about 64. You could probably do it 66 if you took a wider entry, but 65 area in the BR said that is ideal. Here, as soon as the barriers goes away, go to the right, just open up this corner. Not really a good braking reference here, to be honest. I'll just say brake a car length and a half after this barrier. Obviously turn a bit to the right, just open up this next corner. And I'm aiming to be about 60 miles per hour on this apex here. 60, 61 miles per hour, somewhere along that range. Obviously be careful on the throttle on the BR side, because it will wheel spin, which is with a turbo. Easy flat this corner. Here in the BR said, there's this little dirt in the middle of the grass. Obviously grass has dirt, but like it's more brown, this particular part of this dirt here. I'm braking on the end of it, right here. I could probably brake as late as here, to be honest. I'll be experimenting that, but on this lap I broke about half a car length before it. I broke early because I wanted to stay as close to the left as possible without touching this curb, just to open up this next corner. I can't remember the first part I was taking this corner. I think it was about 110 miles an hour, but you want to slow down enough to be about 87 miles per hour on this right part of this corner here. Try to touch as inside right to curb as possible, if you can, sorry, but it doesn't matter really if you don't. Just get close to it. Here, some cars you might have to lift here just to open up this next corner, but as I said, this is flat. As soon as I got halfway between the exit of this corner and the entry of this corner, I brake to down to about 95, 96 miles per hour, and you want your right tyres to be on this part of this curb here without touching the grass if possible. Actually, it's a bit more than that, about 100 miles per hour. You could do it here. As soon as you get off this curb, brake again. There's a bit of a bump in the middle of the track, so just be ready to catch the car in case it bounces a bit. It sometimes happens in BR said, it sometimes doesn't. I think it depends when you start to turn in for this next corner, so just be wary of that. So as soon as I start to hit the bump, it may take you a few laps to get used to where you're braking here, but as soon as I hit the bump, it's when I usually brake, and I usually take this corner about 90 miles per hour from memory. High 80s anyway. Yeah, I'd say about 87 miles per hour here. Here, it's hard to see in replay mode, but there's this little change in tarmac here. As you can see, it gets very slightly darker. I brake a tiny bit after the change, so I'm braking about here. There you go. So I'd say I'm braking about half a car length after the change in tarmac. In this BR said, I'm taking this right-hander at 80 miles per hour, and what you'll be seeing here is I'm going to be cutting the left part of this track because you want to exit this right part in a straight line, and the only way to do it is by going over the grass. Can be a bit unstable at times, but it is the fastest way to do it. I did mess up the exit, but you want your right tyres basically to be on this right line here while being over this grass. But obviously if you don't want to do that, then just take it maybe a mile an hour or two slower. Just make sure you stay on the track. Now this bit in the BR said, easy flat. I'll just point out the turning I use here, turning reference. So I use basically as soon as I start to get to this spare part of this road here, or the end of this barrier, that's when I start to turn to the right. A couple cars you may have to do a small lift and go back on the throttle straight away. Cars like maybe the Genesis, basically cars that are quick on the straight that doesn't have good handling. Some MR cars may struggle a bit on this little hill bit as well, so just be aware. In BR said though, both mediums and softs with full fuel, easy flats. And again, this next corner coming up in the BR said, easy flat. Again, a couple of cars you may have to do a small lift just to make sure you stay on the track, but BR said, easy flat. As soon as I start to straighten up, so I'd say a car length before the end of this curb here, is when I brake for this corner. So about now, there you go. I'm braking a car length before the end of this inside curb here. I'm going to be slowing down to about 75 miles an hour on this corner. You want to be as close to this curb as possible. However, if you touch the inside curb, it can unsettle the car. So do not touch the inside curb here. But get as close to it as possible, especially since it's cambered. And you can go on the throttle extremely early because it's cambered. It'll help you drag around the corner. Plus, it's a very long, quite a long flat section coming up, so you need to be on the throttle as early as you can. Here in the BR said, all I have to do is, I think I even do this flat. Maybe I do a small lift, but in some cars you may have to tap the brakes just to make sure you're close to the inside and you have enough of that angle to tap the next parts of the chicane here. But this is flat for me. I tap the brakes just before I hit this corner, just so that I stay to the left. And I'll say half a second, not half a second, I'll say about 2 columns after this curve here is when I'm going to go back on the brakes here. If I get that brake now, I do think I could brake a touch later here though. This first part's taking about 108 miles per hour. Try and get your right tyres to go on this curve without touching this grass as well. And as soon as you get to these trees here, so this tree here, it's very hard to point out at the time. So about now I'm going to start braking. I'm going to brake here. Stay as close to the inside as possible, because if you go wide, you're just going to understeer wide. You're just not going to make it onto the apex, because you're just not going to be able to slow down enough. So basically you want to try stay in the middle of the track while braking here. This first part, this left part coming up, I'm taking about 61 miles per hour. Again, try not to touch this inside curb, because it can unsettle the car, as you can see here. Here, I'm taking in fourth, and I'm taking this at about, ideally I want to try do it around 68 miles per hour. Use all this outside curb. Then coming up, I can't really point out a turning reference to be honest. I'll just say a car length before they start this curb. I think every other car other than BLZ, maybe the M6, maybe the RCF as well, maybe the GTR. I think every other car other than this will probably have to lift here. 296 as well should be able to do this flat. But in the BLZ, it is flat if you turn in right. If you use too much of the inside curb, it'll push you towards the outside. So try not to touch. You can touch the inside curb, but you don't want to be all over the inside curb. You want to just touch it if you can. I do safety lift just to make sure I easily make the corner, and I'd say about 2 car lengths before the end of this grey curb in here. Maybe even a car length. Yeah, I'd say about a car length and a half before the end of this curb. I'm going to be braking. In the video I said it's better just to stay in fourth instead of engine braking, just to keep it stable. In this corner I'm planning to take it about 84 miles per hour. I do downshift to third, I should have stayed in fourth though. Here, one of the easier braking references to point out, there's this last sign here that says Gr3, whatever that says, sorry I can't pronounce it, I am not German, if you may have noticed. But there's this sign here, and then this first red painted part of this barrier comes up. I'm braking at the end of this red painted part of the first barrier here. Again, you want to go a touch deep in, because if you're trying to hit this first apex, you're just going to hit the second curb and it'll push you off the track. So you want to leave, I'd say, a car width off this first part of this apex. That is enough where you can not easily, but you'll be close to the second apex curb and you'll easily make the corner. This corner, I believe the minimum apex speed I was taking was about 72 miles per hour from memory. Let me double check. Yeah, 72, 73 miles per hour, that sort of range. Here, easy flat. In the BLZ here, I'm braking about half a car length, maybe quarter of a car length before the end of this grey curve here again. Most cars will probably be at least half a car length, just because you're going to have to take this next corner slower than me. But here in the BLZ, I'm braking half a car length before it, and I'm planning to take this corner around 118, 119 miles per hour. Much better to turn in early than later here, because it's a little bit cambered, but you don't want to touch the inside red curve if you can. Try not to go too wide here, because you can get dirty tyres. Here, there's not really a great braking reference here, to be honest, but I just basically use this little gap in the light here as my braking reference. So any second now, I'm going to be braking. There you go. And this right part, you want to slow it down to about 110 miles per hour from memory, between 100 and 110 from memory. And the hairpin, you want to take it about 53 miles per hour in the BLZ. So get as close to this red curve as possible without touching it. Braking a straight line here, go a little bit deep in. I believe it's a bit more grip if you're a bit wide here. I think it's slightly cambered. Try not to touch it inside curve either, because it can unsettle the car. But here I'm exiting about 53 miles per hour. Be a bit careful when turning to the right, because it can oversteer. Here, super easy braking, probably the easiest braking reference of this lap. I'm braking literally end of this curve here. And I'm going to slow it down to about 84 miles per hour. Try clip the inside curb without touching too much of it. But you don't want your right tyres to go over this right side of the curb if possible on the exit, because it can unsettle the car and you won't make it far enough to the left to open up the angle for the next corner, sorry. So yeah, about 84, 85 miles per hour here. This corner, there's this little road sign here, the national speed limit sign thing. I believe that is in Germany. I'm braking about a car length after it, so I'd say directly halfway between the German national speed limit sign and the end of this curb here. I would say about a car length and a half before the end of this curb here. This next corner, I'm trying to take it about 88 miles per hour. Try not touching the inside curb, but if you only just touch it, that's fine. If you touch it a lot, it will really unsettle the car. So try not to touch this inside curb. And again, you can touch the outside curb, but don't go too over it, because again, it can unsettle the car. This next corner coming up, in my opinion, one of the most difficult corners coming up, and I'll say the last corner actually that just came up, that's, in my opinion, my weakest corner, or the second weakest corner. Just in general, I've always struggled in that corner, even though the control doesn't have an issue on this corner, unlike some other corners on this track. I've just always struggled with that corner because if you hit the inside bump, it'll shoot you off the track. So you have to be super precise in that corner. Anyway, BR said, I've seen most cars you're braking halfway between this little blue paint here and this Yokohama sign. However, the BR said, I'm braking on this Yokohama sign. I did break a touch early on this lap, I remember, but apex speed, I'm taking about 81 mile an hour, and you want to turn in a bit early without touching the inside curb, because again, it is slightly cambered. Touch deep, I did turn a touch late, but I do think I could have broke later at the same time. You can touch the inside curb again, but don't be aggressive with it. And here, try not to touch this outside curb, especially this grey part, because it will unset the car and it will shoot you off into the outside barrier. So be very extremely careful. Here I'm going to fast forward because this is easy flats. Even in the rain it'll be easy flats. I'll point out this next corner. I'm going to put it here. So I start turning. Sorry, I've literally just missed it. But I start to turn as this curb ends. In the BR said, on both of the mediums and softs, this is, well, not on the mediums, but on softs it's easy flat. On mediums it is flat, but if you do turn a touch late, you will have to lift. Or if you touch the inside curb, you'll have to lift. You can touch the inside curb a bit, but don't be too aggressive on it again. I think every car other than BR said will have to lift here. Maybe the 296 as well, maybe the M6 as well, but every other car will have to lift here, I think. Maybe the Renault as well. But in the BR said, easy flat, on softs without fuel. On this next corner coming up, I'm braking about half a car length before the entry curb here. I brake a touch early here, I brake now, but I could realistically brake, I'd say, about here. But I'm going to be braking a straight line, and you want to go touch deep in, because if you hug the inside, you're gonna have to put quite a lot of steering angle in to make the exit without having to lift, and it'll just make the car oversteer, at least in the BR side. So it's better to go a bit deep in, like this. And I'm trying to take this corner at about 60, I want to say 62, 63 miles per hour range. I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, about 64 mile an hour, somewhere along those lines. Take the wide exit. Just obviously don't go on the grass. Now, here is one of two corners where the controller has a massive disadvantage compared to real, especially in an MR car, because on the controller, if you hit a bump, sometimes the game will stop you steering because you're momentarily in the air. On the wheel, you can carry on turning, but on the controller, it just stops steering. I think it's some sort of assistance to help the controller players, like signal that when they're going off the track, it just helps them rejoin the track from turning too early, etc. That is why I believe this happens, but terrible news for us consistent control players, because there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to take the suffering. We're going to lose probably a few tenths to wheel users here, unfortunately, but it is what it is. But anyway, the braking reference for this corner, I basically used as soon as this curve starts to straighten up, so about here is when I started to brake. And you want to take this car out about 61 miles per hour in the BRZ if you can. But luckily, BRZ is one of the more stable cars on bumps, so that's one of the reasons why I picked it. This is the main reason why I picked an FR car this season, because I knew if I picked an MR car, I wouldn't be able to get a score here just because of carousels on this track. But anyway, so here you want to try stay on this grey part. On the wheel, stay on this grey part of this banking the whole time. On the controller, I think you have to touch this inside part of this track here, because sometimes there's a little bump in the middle of this banking and it'll just shove you right. So what I do is this. I just touch it inside here, just to keep the car settled without bumping right. Of course, be extremely careful on the throttle, because if you're too aggressive, it'll spin you around, because it'll just unset the car. Next corner coming up, I'm braking, and I say braking, it's literally a small type of brakes. I'm braking halfway on this curb, on this red and white curb anyway. I'm braking halfway between the entry of it and the exit of it. So about here, I'm braking. First part, I'm taking about 117, 180, around 120 miles per hour from memory. Again, you can touch this inside curve, just be careful. Here, you want to slow it down to about 110. I'm braking halfway between the red painted barrier here and the basically where the gap of the barriers are. I'm braking between the point here. Sorry, I had to mute myself for a second because I couldn't exactly remember the reference I was using, but yeah, when there's a gap of the barriers, that's when I usually brake, and I am taking this corner at about 88 miles per hour. Yeah, 88 miles per hour. Again, you can touch the inside curb, but don't go too aggressive on it. Here, I think most cars, it's better to lift. In the outside because of the downforce, this is flat. Try not to touch the inside curb because it can unsettle a car. And I'd say just, and I mean just before the end of this inside curb here, I'm braking, and I mean a tap of the brakes, and then turning up at the same time to the left. You want to hug the inside curb here just to open up this last part coming up. I'm taking this at about 170 miles per hour from memory. So here, cut it as much as you can. Here, there's this little marshal, and there's this end of his curb. I'm braking a bit past halfway between the two. I'll say 3/4. So about here. Any second now. Yeah, I'm braking here. Basically, as soon as I'm braking, I'm going to be tuned to the right. Again, try to touch the inside curb, but again, don't be too aggressive on the curb because it can chuck you off the track. And I'm planning to take this corner at about 100 to 101 miles per hour, but it's extremely difficult. It's a bit too slow on this lap. Here, there's this graffiti, there's this little tree here, and there's this Yokohama sign. I'm braking, I'll say half a car length before this Yokohama sign, right here. I'll say half a car length between the two. As soon as I'm braking, I'm turning. Again, don't touch this inside curb. I'm taking this corner at about 95 miles per hour from memory. Go a bit deep in because you will make it back on time to the left. But I said I'm braking about half a car length before the end of this grey curb here. And I'm taking this corner about 92, 93 miles per hour. Again, don't be too aggressive touching the inside curb here because it can unsettle a car. Maximise the exit here. As long as your right tyre doesn't go over this red and white curb, or this grey curb I should say, you're good. You can get dirty tyres and a penalty, so be careful. Here, I'm braking at the start of this red and white curb here. I'm slowing it down to about 85 miles per hour. And again, try just touch the inside curb without going too aggressive on it. So like that, that's about the perfect line. Use all the exit curb here. Can unsettle the car, so just be careful. Here again, when there's more brown dirt here, that's when I'm braking. I'm taking this corner at about 83, 84 miles per hour. And again, don't touch the inside curb if you can, but you want to be using all the outside curb because it's flat. So it basically helps you get on the throttle earlier and carry more speed. Here, easy flat. Very easy flat, I should say. This corner again, probably one of the more difficult corners on controller, but there's this little bump here. Some cars you may have to lift before you hit this bump or this little jump, but in the BR said because of the downforce, I'm just braking on this 17 kilometer sign right here. There you go. I am a bit in the air, as you can see here, but basically the braking won't really do much except put a bit more weight towards the front of the car to help land a bit quicker. That's why I'm braking now, even though I'm a bit off the air, up in the air I should say. And I'm taking this corner about 170 miles per hour here. Could probably take it about 119 if you did it better, and I think the wheel would help a bit more there as well. Control does tend to suffer a bit of bumps compared to wheel anyway, at least from what I've seen. Here, there's this marshal here. I think in some cars it's best to brake halfway between this marshal and the beginning of this curb you're about to see here. However, in the BRZ, I'm braking a car length before the end of the entry of this curb, so any second now I'm going to be braking. There you go. I've just started to lift. I'm braking a car length before the end of this curb. However, in I'd say most other cars, so I'm braking here. In most other cars, I'd probably brake about here, basically where this graffiti is. What's it actually say? Gas? Where this gas graffiti is, if you can make it out. That's where I'd probably brake for most cars. But in the BRZ, I'm braking a car length before this curb, and when I say brake, I mean a tap of the brakes. I'm taking this first apex at about 125 miles per hour from memory. Maybe even 130. Then here, there's this little darker shade of a barrier here on the outside. I'm braking on the end of that, so about here. Yeah, I'm braking here. I brake a touch early on this lap from memory, but I should be braking here. I should start to brake here, I should say. This left part, you don't really want to touch the inside curb because it can push you onto the gravel and unsettle the car. And you want to take it in the BRZ at about 93, 94 miles per hour. I did turn a bit late because I was just a bit nervous. Here again, similar to last corner, basically at the end of this darker part of this barrier, right here, I'm braking and I'm taking this corner at about 75 miles per hour. And I will say now, this is the second corner where the controller just can't compete with the wheel just because of the bump in the middle of the corner. Luckily, in the BRZ, it takes bumps super well. However, if you're on an MR, you're very likely going to have to overslow the car a lot. Just because if it hits the bump, it will just stop steering and unsettle the car. However, in the BRZ, because it takes the bumps quite well, 95% of the time, I can do this consistently. Like I said, about 75 miles an hour. You want your left tyre to be just off this curb, and you want your right tyre to be on this left side of this banking here. Pick up the throttle early because it's cambered. Here, hard to point out, I'll just say turn. Some cars you'll probably have to tap the brakes. However, in the BRZ, it's just a small lift. I'm turning and lifting about a car length before the end of this curb here. Okay, I've just started to turn now I've lift. Just watch how much I left. I take this first apex at about 117 miles per hour. I do think you can maybe even do it flat if you're committed enough. I did turn a bit late. This in the BRZ is easy flat. Some cars you may have to do small lift, but you should try to do this flat because it's a super long straight going up the Dottinger. I'm just going to skip forward this part. This is easy flat. All the way until here. I say even in some power cars, you might want to start braking halfway between the end of this curb here and the, what do you call it? The start of this tiny grey curb here. However, in the BRZ, I'm braking about half a car length after this little start of this little grey curb in here. In fact, let me go frame by frame until I see the ABS light showing any second. I'd start to lift now, there you go. As you can see, a good car length after this curb. Maybe even a car length and a half in the BRZ. Gets close to this inside barrier here. Use all this outside track without going on the grass. Basically, as soon as this grey curbing starts, turn to the right. Try get your right tyre to go on this grey part of this curbing. Just keep the car settled and, you know, you have more track to play with so you can get on the throttle earlier and you minimise the distance, of course. BRZ, I'm planning to take this corner about 71, 72 miles per hour if possible. But again, super difficult corner to nail, so as long as you're above 70, you're doing a good job. I did exit third because I was a bit deep, however, exiting fourth is better in the BRZ. And that's a lap around the Nordschleife. I'll very quickly point out, because I saw someone comment this, about braking balance. I think every FR car I'll use +5 here. I'm just trying to remember if there's any FR cars I wouldn't use +5, but maybe the Master. That would be the only car I'd consider not using +5. That car would probably go like +2. MRs, it depends on some MRs. Porsche, I'd probably go -1 or even -2. Huracan, I'd probably go +1. R8 would probably be about -1 as well. Citroen would probably still be +3 at least, just because that car tends to understeer a bit. But I'd say most MRs, I'd be looking around between -1 and +1. But what I will mention is I'd rather have a car that understeers a bit here than oversteer under braking. Because if you oversteer under braking, especially with some bumps, it can just really unsettle the car. So I'd rather go a bit more forward brake balance than and just understeer a bit than oversteer and trying to gain time with a rotation. Saying that, now thinking about it, even in the Porsche, I'd probably even be tempted to go -2 or even -3, because that car is very oversteery under the brakes. But other than that, those are sort of rough braking references, braking balance to use. But yeah, that is a lap going around the North Drive. I very quickly talked about the racetrack at the beginning of the video, so if you want to go back to it, just rewind to the start of this video, and I quickly talk about it. But I'm going to end this video now, so if you could, guys, I would appreciate a like and a sub if you find this video helpful and enjoyable to watch. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll answer to the best of my ability as always. I do think, like I said, there's probably 2 seconds in my lap realistically if I was to push it, which I will be. But I just wanted to get a decent lap just to help with a guide for you guys to learn from, and hopefully you guys learn from it and get consistent. I would highly recommend, if you can and if you've got the time, even in the TT session, don't restart, just carry on driving around, just so that you can get used to every corner, the rough lines, the rough braking references. It's better to do that than just to restart and redoing the same braking points, etc. Especially if you've raced on NurburGP quite a few times, because it'll be the same braking references except for the first chicane and the first left-hander of this track. But other than that, I'd recommend just driving around and using that delta to learn how late you can brake, how much speed you can roughly take in each corner, the rough lines to take, etc. But without further ado, guys, like I said, I would appreciate a like and a sub. Hope it helps, hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you when I stream this tomorrow. Fingers crossed. See you later, guys, hope it helps, and good luck. See you later. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you an end of a stint quickly. So on this one, I did 2 laps of mediums because I wanted to test out doing 2 mediums and 3 softs because it's 5 laps. However, I kind of forgot to put the soft tyres on. So what I decided to do is I decided to do a 3-lap soft run, but start with 60% fuel. So basically, what I'd be doing in the second stint, just instead of exiting, letting the AI exit me and like taking the pit stop in the middle of the race, it's just me driving out the pits instead. But anyway, I'm showing you the end of the soft stint because I just want to show you what high wear is going to be looking like and what I would recommend. So I didn't really talk much about the tyre strap of the race strap here because I wanted to mainly focus on the lap guide, since it's such a long track and I don't want to overload the information. But I'm going to very quickly talk about the possible tyre strats I think for this race. So, in my opinion, there's only 2 strats, well 3 strats if you think about it, but you either do 2 laps on the softs or 3 laps on the softs, and obviously 2 on mediums or 3 on mediums, since you have to use both tyres. However, in the BR said, depending on where I qualify, I am planning, I think in every car other than maybe BR6, Citroen and Master, I think every other car would probably be better off using 3 laps mediums than 2 laps on softs. However, depending on where I qualify, I may consider doing 3 laps on softs just to try and get an undercut, because my car's not going to really be able to overtake other cars, at least reliably, just because it's so on the straights. Plus, if I get overtaken, then it's a long day, so yeah. I think I would consider starting on softs only if I get a pole, maybe P2 as well, just to try and get away from people, because if I get stuck behind someone, yes, I can maybe fuel save. However, if their car's good on fuel, it's going to fuel safe, and there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. So yeah, that's why I'm adding this at the end of the video. I'm shifting the BS at about 70%, so between where the 6 is and the start of the suggested gearbox, that's where I'm within the Subaru to make sure I use 100% fuel without having to refuel the pits. It uses precisely 20% of the lap doing this, I found. And I do exit 4th on some corners compared to 3rd, just to take like real extra fuel. But anyway, now I'm actually going to end the video, so thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed. Again, don't forget to like and sub if you found it helpful and enjoyable. Leave any questions in the comments below if you want any clarification or anything, or just want help in general, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. But thanks for watching this, hope you can learn, good luck in your races, and I'll stream this tomorrow. So see you later guys, and good luck.